I'm calling to order the Utility Service Board meeting of February 27th, 2023. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the last meeting of February 13th. Are there any questions about the minutes? Questions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Can I raise a point of order?
Yes.
We should have Jim Sherman's
Oh.
face on that screen up
Oh,
there.
okay. We don't have him.
Oh, he's not participating. Okay. He's
okay.
joining us. He's not participating. Okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
Joining us but not participating.
He's just listening.
Okay. Well, hello, Jeff.
Hi, Jim.
For him to vote, he needs to be visible to you, and you need to be visible to him.
Okay, well, thank you, Vic. All right, so the next item are the approval of the claims. First one is standard invoices for $289,688.05. Are there any questions on the claims? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item up are the utility bills for a total of $42,707.33. Are there any questions on the utility bills? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, on our distribution, maybe it's just an extra copy here.
I think there
Okay,
were
two,
three.
okay.
There were three copies of
Okay.
this.
Okay, that's what
same
I'm just
thing.
double checking. It was the same amount.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
then,
So then utility
Now,
bills
where
was
was it?
$42,707.33.
so I move to approve the utility bills.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up are the wire transfers for a total of $399,000, $399,772.58. Any questions on the wire transfers? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Finally, customer refunds in the total of $2,260.28. Any questions about the customer refunds? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Before we go on to the approval of the consent agenda, I should like to welcome Molly Stewart to the board to her first meeting. Thank you very much for getting involved with us, and we're so glad to have you here.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Okay, approval of the consent agenda. Vic.
Good evening. I'm happy to bring tonight's consent agenda, which totals $5,000. Has only one item on it for 2 Title Plus. This is a $5,000 service agreement for 5 parcels related to the final phase of the Clear Creek Box Culvert, or the Hidden River, as we've called it lately, reconstruction project. Since there's only one item, there's no opposition, this will be approved as recommended by staff. And hearing no opposition, this item is approved as recommended. Thank you.
Thanks, Vic. Item number 5 on the agenda is the resolution for bid acceptance and the contract award for the East Tank Improvements Project to Worldwide Industries Corporation. Dan Hudson.
For the record, I'm Dan Hudson, Capital Projects Manager for the City of Bloomington. I'd like to respectfully ask the board to accept Resolution 2023-03 for Worldwide Industries for the rehab of the East Tank Water facility. They were the most responsive and responsible bidder of the 14 bidders that we had. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
I should say the resolution passes. Okay, next up is the request for the approval of professional engineering consultant services with Davie Resource Group on the Miller's Shower dredging project. We have Kat this afternoon, so welcome.
Hello, Catherine Zager, Assistant Director, Environmental. I'm presenting the request for approval for Davie Engineering to do all the permitting services that are related to dredging Miller showers. Any question? I could elaborate about the permits. It's 401, 404 permitting with the landfill, any stormwater permitting that may be associated with it, and then other project management associated. Happy to take questions.
Go ahead, Kurt.
How often do we need to dredge that facility?
So that's based on how much sediment is accumulated. And earlier, some of you might remember, we approved a bathymetric survey. And the bathymetric survey showed that there are areas where a lot of the sediment is accumulated. We've never dredged it in the, I think, 20 years of its existence. So it's in need.
Any other questions? When do we anticipate the permitting is one step?
Yeah.
You know, do we think this will take place this year or maybe not into next year?
So, it depends on how long the permitting takes and what permits will be required. So we're putting in the applications for permits. There is a likelihood that it might not be until next year, given the time that it takes to get this done.
And when we do the dredging, is it going to require any shutdown of roads in that area, or will they be able to contain everything to the property itself?
I don't anticipate roads being closed, but I can't say that for certain.
Okay.
Without the specific plan in front of me.
Okay. Any other? Go ahead, Seth.
I think this is for Matt and Chris. The due date for the signature has the wrong year on it.
On the cover sheet,
Yeah,
the cover sheet is not in control,
okay,
so if it's just a typo, we can live with it.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes. Next is the request for the approval of the agreement for services with Southern Ionics Incorporated, and Matt Havey has that one.
Board meetings ago, Mr. Wheeler presented a list of several contracts for chemicals for the three plants. At that time, we had a total of 10 contracts that were needed, and I believe we presented 7 or 8 of them that evening. This is just another one of those contracts where we're paying 18.5 cents per pound for chemicals to use at the Dillman wastewater plant. Similar, in this use the reverse auction process, the same as the other chemicals.
Are there any questions on that? Hearing none, is there a motion to
Vice
approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Matt, you're up again as well. Now it's for the approval of the expense of uncollectible accounts.
There's a process where we're required to write off accounts that are 90 days past due that are under $40. So that's what we're representing here. This is an accounting exercise. We will still, all these accounts are still with the collection agencies, and we will still try to get the money. And if we do, then we'll end up reversing this write-off when we get the payment. And these are, the time frame for this write-off was August 1st of 2021 through July 31st of last year.
Great. Are there any questions on this?
Yes, Kirk. Okay, so with the second paragraph, expensing the uncollectible wastewater accounts, there's nothing that's like we've tried to return payment, overpayment to a customer that's like, this is all of they owe us money. Okay,
So what we're
thank
saying
you.
is we're kind of setting a
Any-
reserve back saying we're.
Like they've
we might
left
not-
town on their
Yes.
account and then they left with a balance. Okay,
So we're kind of taking the hit, but they're still at the collection agency being
Okay.
worked.
thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I talked to Matt about that earlier today. I noticed some names on there of companies in town that are still doing business. And I thought, well, why are we writing these off if they're still operating? But the answer is, we're still gonna collect them. But this is an accounting system, and once we get them back,
Yep.
we'll
It
get the
just
money
comes back
back.
to us.
And,
Correct.
It's a way to keep the book straight, I
Correct.
guess.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it. And current.
Any other questions? Wait, if there aren't any, is there a motion to approve? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Great. That motion passes as well. All right. The next item is we have got old business, and we do have an item on the Eagle Ridge Civil Engineering update on the Clear Creek project, and that is gonna be Brock Ridgeway. Is that correct? Great.
Good afternoon. I'm Brock Ridgeway. With me is Michael Tanis. Michael's been with me since 2011. He's actually the author of the report, which you've all been given a copy of. But I'm going to do the easy part, and he's going to do the hard part, which is not only advancing the slides, but answering your questions after this. So I'll just hit the highlights and let him deal with some of the details.
Shift around so that you can see. Or yes, we'll turn here. Whatever works best for you. Okay, thank you.
Is everyone good? I just wanted to start out, first of all, by thanking you for the opportunity to be here. It's been quite a long time since I've presented to your board. In fact, I think the last time was approximately 25 years ago. Wow. Might have been about 23, I'm not sure. I worked on the Big Dig, the first of the culvert reconstruction projects, and I don't think anyone who's in this room now was in the room then, other than Jane worked for the city then, but not CBU. I know the board has all changed, but anyway, it's kind of a testament to how long this has taken that we're going to talk to you tonight about the last section of the culvert reconstruction for the system itself. So anyway, go ahead and go to the next one, Michael. I want to talk about two things tonight, two things that are very much related but also very, very different. The first one is the hydraulic modeling report, which you've all been given a copy of, that talks about the performance of the Clear Creek system. And the section of that we looked at was from Grimes Lane and upstream from there. So we'll go into that, but I'm actually going to talk about the second part of that slide first, the design of the reconstruction, because I think we're going to spend less time with that, and it's less likely to create questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the design first, which is the part of this that I'm more fundamentally involved with. Go ahead, Michael. So the reconstruction section we're talking about currently is what's highlighted in yellow. It's the final section. The Big Dig, as it's locally referred to, provided the section that went under Kirkwood and Dunn, and then up to the half block at the alley north of Kirkwood. And we left a stub for the future with that project, a stub that is 22 feet wide by 4.75 feet tall, and now we want to finish the rest. So the yellow highlight is actually a slightly revised path from where the current culvert is. The culvert does occupy the alley, but it's only about 12 to 16 feet wide. The proposed culvert is 22 feet wide, so it will take the entirety of the alley. But then, through coordination with IU, we've agreed that we're designing an actual extension to the culvert to take the end of it up to the northwest corner of Franklin Hall. That will provide Franklin Hall itself with some protection, because there's a lot of erosion in the walls that are right next to that building. And then also it allows us to somewhat straighten the angle of the bends of the creek itself to reduce the erosion and the forces to help the culvert perform a little bit better in that section. We might as well go to the next slide. In terms of the basic project highlights, it does of course include the replacement of the box culvert itself. But then we're also going to add a number of inlets to improve the surface drainage conditions. That will be focused in the 6th and Indiana intersection area, and then also in the area directly behind the Von Lee, which have historically been the areas that flood the worst when the culvert has been overwhelmed. In terms of sanitary sewer, I'll show you a picture in a minute that shows the sanitary interceptor that currently occupies part of the existing culvert. We'll be replacing that on a parallel but separate path. And then also we will be eliminating a sanitary pipe that crosses the creek in front of the culvert opening at about knee level that partially obstructs the entrance to the existing culvert. We're going to take the opportunity when there's a big hole in the ground to complete a water main connection up Indiana Avenue that from a little bit north of Kirkwood up to the 6th Street intersection. And then there's an electric component to this project. It turns out that the 3 primary service feeds that feed IU come to the 6th and Indiana intersection. 2 of them are immediately next to the existing culvert and will need to be shifted over to make this fit. So we'll be relocating 2 of the 3 primary electric feeds to the campus as part of this project. And you'll be hearing a little bit more about that because we actually expect to place the ducts for that relocation as an advanced project that would happen this year. And then in terms of restoration, basically it's going to differ on which side of Indiana you're on. The west side of Indiana, which is where most of the work is going to be restored to look essentially the same as it currently does. It's an IU parking lot, it's an alley, it's in the back entrances to some businesses. It's going to be restored to look just like it does now. The IU landscape architect, Mia Williams, who you probably know, is also working with us to tell us what they'd like to see in terms of restoration on the west side of Franklin Hall. There's going to be some space created with this project when we extend the culvert up to the northwest corner and fill in that space that is currently an open channel next to the building. There'll be some space that's, at normal ground level from the sidewalk that might potentially be able to be repurposed. So I want to take that opportunity. And then here's a couple pictures. On the right side, going into that arch, is actually the sanitary interceptor as it currently exists, heading into the culvert, heading west. And then in the nearer view, going across, there's kind of a dark line. That's actually a sanitary sewer pipe coming from IU that sits at about knee-high and, as you can see, partially obstructs the flow. You can see the damming of the water there behind it. And then the other picture is just the alley that this project is in. You can see the Von Lee building, the back corner of People's Park. You can actually see the back edge of the bike shop that's right next to People's Park. And then, of course, on the left-hand side is the landscaping that borders the IU parking lot. This alley is going to be built to be 20 feet wide. Currently, it's about 21 or 22, but DPW wanted to narrow it down to more of the standard. That's fine. The culvert itself has an opening width underneath it of 22 feet. The culvert will actually be larger than the alley itself. Go ahead and move it up one. Just a few interesting things on this project. First of all is the proximity to the Von Lee building itself. We had both underground and above ground survey done to support this project. The difference in space between, if you were to down in the culvert with your hand on the inside face of the wall of the culvert, and then you were standing above with your hand on the outside face of the Von Lee building, that's separated by about 27 inches. And that's 27 inches includes the thickness of the wall of the culvert itself. So we're talking about a distance of about 1.5 feet from the existing culvert to the outside face of the building. That means we need to leave that wall in place and shore it up and make that part of the project to shore the existing culvert wall. We're actually planning to build the new culvert wall just inside of the existing culvert wall and hold the old culvert wall in place so that we don't risk any undermining of the Von Lee building or the adjacent properties. So it's going to just be a component of the project that's going to have to be included to protect those properties. There is a lot of IU property impact associated with this project, which you'll see some of the documentation coming through. We need to occupy half of their parking lot on the north side of the alley during the primary construction. That's the only side from which you can service this project. to have a large crane sitting, dump trucks, et cetera, et cetera. You can't work this from the Von Lee side of the culvert because I just told you how close it is. So we need to occupy half the parking lot. We will also be cutting off access temporarily to the parking lot that is on the east side of the Von Lee. And then, of course, we will be on IU's property when we're working on the west side of Franklin Hall. And there are a couple of other private property owners involved. The Von Lee building, we're working with their property manager. And then the bike garage, which is an individually owned business, privately owned as well. We need to just kind of intrude upon their property to build the project, but we don't need to take anything permanently. It's just a temporary easement. We do anticipate IU participating in the project to a degree. That extension along the side of Franklin Hall is the part that we look to them to participate in financially, because we're extending it to provide protection to that building, and it gives them some space that they could possibly repurpose. The project's going to have very complex phasing because we need to build the culvert working our way across the alley in sections in order to preserve access to the businesses and the back of the Von Lee to the maximum extent that we can. There will be a phase in the course of that where we are literally working immediately behind the building, and that rear entrance to the building has to be closed. It cannot be safely maintained. And we're working with them to basically invoke probably what they did during COVID, which is people need to work remotely for that period of time if they're the kind of folks that needed that back entry, because that is their ADA entrance to the building. That's the only access to their elevator system for the folks that need it. And I understand they do have employees in the IU communications office that do in fact need the wheelchair access. So it's unavoidable, however, just because of the separation. I told you 27 inches. There's no way to work with that amount of space and allow people to use the door. Scheduling. There will likely be a utility relocation, small project in the area this summer. We'd like to do that when the parking is least in demand, because it does need to get into the parking lot for IU. We actually anticipate the primary project being scheduled in 2024, starting in early 2024, because when you think about how this gets done, the really critical phase is when we have to work in Indiana Avenue itself. Indiana Avenue has to be closed. There's a lot of bus routes and a lot of other just functionality and flow around the campus that truly depends on Indiana Avenue to make that side of the campus work. So that phase has to happen during the summer weeks when when it's least in demand. So anyway, that's the culvert. I can take your quick questions if you'd like, or we can just press right on because I'd like to talk about the modeling a little bit.
You're good? Okay.
Okay, great. The watershed analysis that Michael has assembled, what we were tasked with was to look at the Clear Creek system itself and develop a better understanding of how it has been and how it should be performing. We were asked to basically analyze the area of the watershed that is upstream of where Clear Creek crosses under Grimes Lane. And if you look at the watershed, which is in just the shaded gray, that is the watershed that goes through the Clear Creek at Grimes Lane. It's a 3.1 square mile area. It includes virtually all of downtown. It stretches as far as north as about 17th Street, out to the bypass on the east. It's on Grimes Lane on the south side, of course, as you can see, and then it also goes to the northwest out to a degree. On that map, what you're looking at, the black lines are boundaries of sub-watersheds, areas where the water drains to a common point. The blue lines are actually the flow directions, the flow paths of the water itself. So you can actually track the Clear Creek, the open channel portion, and then the Clear Creek enclosed culvert up to the edge of campus. And then it's Clear Creek in the campus itself as mostly an open creek.
Can you just show that one more time? Because it's very difficult to read on the map. So where's the campus? So let's start with
This right here is like where Dunn Meadow would be.
okay.
So the campus would be all this area,
But where we're talking though, in terms of the Franklin Hall down the alleyway is,
Right.
that's right there, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And then it goes down to Grimes, which you said was at the bottom.
And it makes its way all the way down to Grimes.
Okay, thank you.
This area right here is First Street. And that's where it opens up to open channel flow.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the purpose of the hydraulic analysis was to better understand what this thing's doing. That being the primary goal, let's first show you what it was doing prior to about 2022. Now, this model is a combination of factors, but the first one being the topography and looking at where the lowest ground is. Keep in mind that an enclosed system like the Clear Creek route was once the natural creek. It just got enclosed over decades and decades to be what it is today. So, but that's still the path of the water, and where you see the flooding when it does occur is along that path. So this was the pre-2022 project condition that was modeled, and this is using the statistical 100-year storm. That is a statistical term that does not mean that the storm is only going to come back once every 100 years. That was the initial meaning of that term, but that's no longer the case with weather changing the way it changes, and it has been changing. But this was the condition prior to your 2022 culvert reconstruction project, and you can see the significant inundation of Dunn Meadow, the water crossing Indiana Avenue, flooding behind the Von Lee, and then creating pockets of flooding at of course, Kirkwood, then 4th Street, 3rd Street, down into the area. And you've seen some of this, and you've seen some of this recently enough that you have anecdotal evidence that this is what's been happening for you. So anyway, this was just an analysis of where things were at before the project that you recently completed in the culvert reconstruction program. To zoom in, the next one, and just to show you where the culvert reconstruction project is, that's the alley behind the Von Lee and that flooding that was occurring back there. That still does occur back there, but and you can see Dunn Meadow in the upper right. So this is really just a zoom in and placing the same model exhibit on an aerial rather than on a map. Now, the next slide is the post-2022 version, and it might help visually, Michael, if you scroll back 2 and then scroll down to this one. See how much blue is on the post-22 and then what was in the pre-2022. That a lot of that section in the middle. With the most recent project, we expect the culvert to perform much better through the 3rd Street area, the 4th Street area. You still see the buildup of surface water behind the Von Lee building, and you still see the inundation of Dunn Meadow as the post-2022 project. This is essentially where you are right now in terms of condition. And the next slide shows where we expect to be after the next project. And you can see you still have the inundation of Dunn Meadow. However, you no longer have the extent of overtopping into Indiana Avenue, and the ponding anticipated behind the Von Lee has disappeared as well. So I say this is an anticipated condition, and you should always be very cautious if somebody says, well, if we do this, will we stop flooding Kirkwood Avenue? And that is a very dangerous thing to really ever say, because we can't fully predict weather, and this modeling is based on a number of assumptions that but nonetheless, it does explain a great deal about how the culvert has been performing and what the program has done over the years to decrease that flooding, to not only in terms of its frequency, but also its severity, and then its duration. We had very good anecdotal evidence from the June 2021 storm that was significant, that the owner of the bike shop came out and literally with a shovel cleared off the inlet that was behind him, and once he did that and cleared the debris, the leaves, the mulch, whatever was blocking the inlet that was right behind him, that the water was gone within a few minutes. The water simply needed to get in there, but the culvert was able to take the water if it could get into the culvert in the first place. So that's actually why we talked with the new culvert project of improving the inlet conditions at 6th and Indiana and also behind the Von Lee to make that even better inlet capacity to get into the culvert itself. So you might as well go to the next one. I've been ignoring the southern half of this study because the enclosed system ends at First Street and it opens up, but this is the southern half. And this is what's happening currently based on the 100-year storm. Now, there's 5 structures within this reach of the creek. There's 3 bridges at my brain suddenly, at Dodds, Allen, and Grimes itself. But then there's also 2 privately owned structures over the creek in between there. There's the Lauren Wood Builders facility, and then farther south is Auto Heaven, has their own little private bridge between their lots where they have the scrap cars. What you see about this section is somewhat interesting. I know it looks a little irregular, but this is actually a very uniform flooding condition for this length of a creek. And the reason for that is that the culvert walls, the bridge openings underneath each structure are of a very similar cross-section to the channel itself. The channel walls are very vertical. The bridges cross pretty much at the top of those walls at a similar elevation. So what you have is a section of the creek which actually has a fairly consistent cross-section, even though some of it's in bridges, some of it is not. So you see this flooding that's approximately of equal width coming down, and for the most part is contained within the valley that naturally forms down in that area. Not very much of Walnut Street gets flooded, but it does up north of Dodds, south of First Street. But nothing really gets over to Morton for most of that length. It's in the 5 structures, and I mostly made a note of that. You actually don't have jurisdiction over any of those 5 structures. The 3 bridges are county bridges, and then you got the 2 privately owned structures that those folks have some sort of prescriptive easement on them for the drainage going under them, but you actually don't own these structures, they do. And for one example, the example for each of the 5 structures is within the report. I only put one of them in here for the sake of time. This is Dodds Avenue. And just look at the hydraulic, the numbers themselves. The 100-year flood will push about 2487 cubic feet per second through this location in terms of a flood condition. Underneath the bridge can only handle about 928 of those cubic feet per second. All the rest of it's coming over the top. And in this particular location, that equates to about 1 3/4 feet of water. Now, if you look in the report, some of the other locations have flooding as deep as 2.6 feet. But again, it's a fairly uniform section of the creek because the channel is under capacity and so are the bridges, so they have kind of a consistent uniform flooding condition throughout this reach. When you look at 2.5 feet, that's not an insignificant amount of water, and that water is moving. It's moving fast, and it's obviously with the fatality that occurred at this exact location back in 2021, that water is more than powerful enough to take a car right off the road with it. So anyway, the other locations are also in the report. So what do you do with this information? We do offer a number of kind of general recommendations. The challenge here is that in the southern section, the analysis is really just intended to inform you about what's going on and kind of explain it. It does not offer specific recommendations because most of this infrastructure, most of this property is not owned by the city. So it's not directly in your jurisdiction, but you do have an interest in this, and the flooding conditions are obviously of interest to the city. The fact is the existing system of open channel and bridges is under capacity and has been for a very long time. The ongoing flooding of these adjacent properties and the overtopping of structures should be anticipated at this point without changes to the reach. The upstream enclosed section will have taken 25 years for you to finish by the time we build something in 2024. I think that's probably the most important message I have to offer. I've stood before this board a really long time ago when we talked about the very first section, and here you are being presented with design plans for the final section of the enclosed portion of this creek. It has taken 25 years of ongoing, steady investment and commitment by your department to see this happen. And the result is flooding that occurs much less often, much less severely, and of much less duration than it did before. This downstream section is going to probably take a very similar commitment. And, you know, whereas I stood before this group very early in my career when that happened, I'm getting very close to the end of my career now. I'm not going to see this one happen. So anyway, mostly we're just trying to say this is a long-term commitment, but it's a problem, and hopefully this report helps you to better understand what's happening out there when you do see it happen. So, at this time, we'll take any questions, and like I said, I'm giving Michael the hard part. I think he's probably going to answer most of them. But,
Any questions at this end? How about down this way?
I
Kirk?
guess we have a good plan for the 23 and 24 sections, basically utility relocation this summer and then construction next year. But in the big picture, we need to be thinking about downstream and how we're going to do that. This last one took us a long time, and I think when we started back in 98, 99, when we put this together, I don't think, did utilities have responsibility for stormwater then? When did we pick that up? Was it then? 98, okay. Probably when the city realized they needed to do this, it was time to come up with a stormwater utility.
it was a big reason for the
Yeah.
identification of the need for the funding.
So it's on us to make the plan for the next section of this, because we see the need, and we've had a fatality, and it will happen again. And so I
Hopefully not.
appreciate the insights. Good analysis as I look through all of the pages on this, and I appreciate, these next couple of years are gonna be, I think, I remember an assignment I had was to help communicate to the university population what the big dig was gonna be like in 2000. And we've got a little bit of that work to do here with the Kirkwood merchants and the IU people that will be.
We'll be presenting to them in a couple of weeks, and it won't be this level of overview. I'm going to get down in the weeds with them because they want to know exactly how they're going to get to their doors. And
Well, the good part is that Jane and her team have already talked to a lot of the merchants and held a meeting downtown about it, and because I think it's they see it as continuation of the project that we just finished.
That meeting will be on March 9th.
Yeah.
10 o'clock.
So, good that we're this far along. Thank you.
thanks.
That meeting, is that a public meeting? Is it downtown Bloomington, or what's
The Kirkwood Merchants.
Kirkwood Merchants?
Yeah, and it will be at the Episcopal Church
Okay.
there at Grant and Kirkwood. Members of the board would, if you'd like to hear what the merchants' concerns are and hear what they have to say, you're certainly welcome to come.
You said that's 10 a.m.
It's 10 o'clock, right? 10 o'clock, yeah.
on the 9th. You all? Great.
And as for the downstream portion, we have had conversations in-house here about that, and that area is very complicated. It feeds down into Switchyard Park. There's a lot of potential for rethinking that area of town, which would be a big conversation between the city and the county. And when I say city, I mean transit is down there, parks is down there. There may be economic development opportunities for the city down there. There's just a lot of things that could happen. And we're just kind of dipping our toe in the water of talking to people of how that could all be re-envisioned. And but as Brock said, it's probably way past my time here by the time that gets done.
I know it's past mine, at least.
Kirk, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Is that Megan?
I was just wondering, so when do we expect completion of this project, starting this summer and then in the Von Lee area?
Fall of
24?
2024.
Okay, all
Because
right.
there will be tree replanting that has to be done, and we want to wait until
Sure,
cooler
but
weather for
I
that.
know, focusing on that time when the students are away, you expect to be able to get that completed by the time they return in August of '24.
Yeah, the key is to get the portion under Indiana Avenue built during those summer weeks, get the road reopened to service, but there will still be restoration going on after that.
Okay, thank you. And I guess a lot of the details would be to work out with those Kirkwood merchants about making sure that we're compensating them if needed we're doing what we need to do to be good partners with them. And I hope to be able to do like an on-site visit when this gets started to see it all open and everything. Thank you. Yeah, that's.
And I just wanted to, I think the work that's being done is fantastic, and I love seeing all of the diagrams of kind of the before and after. But just to be clear, this last fix, while it's going to help substantially, that Dunn Meadow area still remains essentially a floodplain area it's probably going to happen there again. But the idea is that we're going to continue to do this work so that it decreases the damage that's done there and along the entire system.
Fair to say.
Yeah.
I think in the report, Amanda, you have a really good point. What happens is that with the current inlet, it overtops Indiana, and that's when it gets into the parking lots and into the merchants. So this is going to have a bigger inlet from the exposed part of the river. So you have a bigger inlet there at Indiana on the east side of 6th. So we won't have the overtopping anymore, where it just can't get in enough. Is that?
To say you won't have any is probably a
Well,
bit of
yeah.
a overstatement, but it will greatly diminish it. We're going to be regrading the area basically from IU Service Drive that's just north of the culvert that goes to the
Yeah.
north side of Franklin Hall, and there's a little stage area set up back there off the sidewalks. IU has a bridge immediately upstream of this within 300 feet or so, and it is actually the smallest bridge very close by. It gets overtopped before the culvert does even. And unfortunately, due to the flow of the land, you see the focus point of water is actually at 6th and Indiana, because that is the low point in Indiana Avenue. It's up there. It's not at the culvert itself. So that is where it's been overtopping, is at 6th Street. We're going to try to grab as much of that water as we can with this project to get it back down to the culvert opening and reduce the amount that gets to 6th Street. We're also going to be adding a number of inlets right at that intersection, just so it can suck a lot of water. And we're going to triple the inlets right behind the Von Lee, so that if any one gets plugged with mulch, leaves, whatever, to provide that measure of redundancy that you should have. Because again, the anecdotal evidence is that if there's an inlet and it's open back there and it's functioning, the water goes down in a hurry. So, yeah, we're going to just try to catch everything back there and get as much back into the culvert as quickly as possible.
I just want to add one thing. The area it shows going into Indiana a little bit there. Essentially, the analysis showing before the culvert that is built, having the maximum like 3.5 feet deep of water across Indiana. And with the analysis and the improvements, it's showing about 8 inches maximum. So it still allows your emergency vehicles through during this 5-year storm event, which I think was huge, you know, just to have access during these large events, so.
Great.
Mark, you mentioned that the underground part was gonna be wider, the underground culvert along the alley was gonna be wider than the alley, right? So I know you guys have been working with IU facilities on this, but I'm just thinking, if they come back in there and put curb and tree plot in, at some point that, you know, we're building on top of a culvert again. Was there a reason why you're?
Mia, she couldn't get any trees in the tree plot anymore.
Well, that's,
Because it will literally be on top of the box, but the box will be down 12, maybe 18 inches to the top. Especially when you fill up behind curb and you fill that with planting soil and whatnot. So there will be the ability to have shrubbery and some of the smaller scale green, but not trees.
now you mentioned City Public Works didn't want the alley any wider, I guess.
They said they wanted to make it a uniform 20 feet. Right now, it varies depending on the section between 20 and maybe 22,
Well, it
23.
seems like we might want to make,
We
we
will
might
be-
want to make an exception if the culvert's actually going to be that wide, because we're always in a situation where we're having to relocate things to, if we have a failure in the culvert, we're going to have to, all that sort of thing.
We will be, James League for the record, we will be acquiring an easement from IU that will encompass the rest of that culvert and give working room for us and the electric lines that will be in there.
Yeah, I'm just,
And at this point in time, IU has stated that's a parking lot, it'll remain a parking lot for the time being. No future plans, but yes, we will have an easement, so they would not be able to build on top of us, build a building on top of us. We
Okay.
often, many areas have parking lots,
yeah.
curb, gutter.
I guess that's not very expensive to move that if we have to get into the culvert, It's
Yeah.
just curb, so
Yeah.
not a problem.
Yeah, it's generally allowed in our easements. You could
Yeah.
do a parking lot on top of us. There are several, because of the location of this culvert, it goes under a lot of parking lots.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that infrastructure generally goes back in place, but nothing, no structures are allowed.
Great, thanks, Jane. Another point, I think, one of the issues we get into, and we're going to have to use part of the IU lot that's used both during the day and in the evening for the downtown merchants. The good part is that with the demolition of the Poplars building, we now have a lot of capacity that IU does in the Poplars parking garage. And that's, I checked last week, and of course, after 5, people are free to park in there, the public is. And during the day, it's hourly parking. So even though there will be temporary closure of a bunch of the surface parking, the garage ought to be able to handle that. So that will decrease some of that pressure for parking, both during the day and in the evening. We're lucky there. Thanks.
Anything else? Great. Well, Brock, Mike, thank you very, very much for your work on this. We greatly, greatly appreciate it and helps to hopefully get things moving again and resolved here, so.
Thank you.
Now, on that, that was just simply a presentation, correct? We don't need to vote on anything there. Okay, perfect. All right. Is there any other old business that needs to be addressed? Old business from staff? Old business from the board? The only old business I have from the board is that if you have not responded to Frank regarding the board retreat training session, board training, which is, we're hoping to get from March 6th. Please see him before the end of the meeting so that we can get it on the calendar.
In the email, like what time frame we were looking at, and I was waiting for a response.
2 hours. I apologize. I thought I said that to everyone. But
Okay.
yeah, approximately 2 hours.
On March 6th.
Okay, sure. Like at this time? Or, okay,
Okay.
I'll email you.
The subcommittee reports, we did have a subcommittee meeting. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm actually out of town that whole day, so I'm sorry. I should have looked at that sooner.
Okay, so we'll go back to the drawing board, because with Molly being a new board member, we definitely want her to be part of the board training. So, okay. So, again, once Frank gets that out to us, let's try to get that all on everybody's calendars pretty quickly. Subcommittee reports, we did have a meeting today of the administrative committee and a subcommittee, and what we looked at was the structure of our subcommittees, the roles and responsibilities of them, as well as the assignments to them. So we've made we had a great discussion and made a couple of decisions as a committee that we would like to bring forth to you. I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking through my notes here. Okay, here we go. So one of the first things that we discussed was that we're going to ask that we get some input from the board members as to which committees they would like to chair and serve on throughout the year. And we're also going to do this during the fourth quarter of the year so that we have this set up in time for the following year. One of the other items that we discussed was meeting frequency, and we have asked Frank to come up with at least 2 dates during the year. So we'll meet twice a year. Each committee will try to meet twice a year. That will be on our calendars. That, of course, means that we also may have additional committee meetings as things come up, as staff need us to review things. And there may be committees like finance, for example, that might meet a little bit more frequently because of budgeting and other items that need to be reviewed. So what we would like to do is get everybody's input. These are not set in stone yet. We're going to ask everyone which committees they would like to serve on. We've also identified all of the chairs for the committees already. There is one major change, and that is the Rules and Regulations Committee, which is at the bottom of this list. Seeing what the one responsibility was to review the rules and regulations for water, wastewater, and stormwater, we wondered if we could possibly fold that into the administrative committee, so that it would have the administrative rules and regulations. And I believe the committee is recommending that we do that, but I do believe we need to have a vote from the board to change the subcommittee. So, are there any questions about what we met or any suggestions? Okay. Is there a motion to move the Rules and Regulations Committee into the Administrative Committee?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. So, Frank, I will talk to you after the meeting and give you a couple of updates here, and then we'll get the board to make sure we have all the positions filled in the subcommittees. All right, Vic?
Chris, do we need a motion to take out the references to the consent decree, or can that just be done?
Oh, I think that, I mean, it never hurts to over motion on things, but I don't think you're ever gonna have anybody complain about it, so it seems to me to be not necessary.
Well, and I think I look at it, Chris, I kind of look at it as these are just some of the general, that they could change at any given time. We might have some new thing come up about X, Y, or Z that you need board input on that we could just add it to. So I feel like the responsibilities have to be a little bit more fluid than the actual committees themselves.
Yeah, we will assign to whatever makes the most sense. So,
Yeah.
but we'll go ahead and then, since I brought it up, we'll go ahead and strike any references to things that don't exist anymore, like the consent decree.
Like the consent decree. Perfect,
okay.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Did any other subcommittees? I think we were the first group, right? Okay. Are there any staff reports?
business.
Oh, new business, I apologize. New business from the board. New business from staff.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we've already done subcommittee reports. Now, Vic, any staff reports?
Yes, actually, I have a number of things to talk about. The first one is on behalf of the staff, I'd like to welcome our new board member. We're looking forward to working with you. And we do like to take board members on tours of all of our facilities, and we will schedule them when it works for you and other members. So, and that means anybody who wants to come, obviously, we'll go ahead and schedule that. So we're happy to have you aboard. Sorry. The second thing is I'd like Kat Zager has an announcement to make.
Kat Zager, Assistant Director, Environmental. I just wanted to officially introduce Justin Mester. He's our new Water Quality Coordinator, doing a great job so far.
Welcome, Justin.
I also have an item here for Frank. Frank had an idea regarding the board meetings and the packets. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Daniel Frank, Admin Assistant to the Director. So our Employee Development Specialist, Mel, whose last name I struggle through, Ruskowski?
Ruskowski, yes.
She brought up an idea to purchase several Chromebooks that we would use for training of some of our employees. We were trying to come up with other opportunities to use those. We wanted to see if the board would be open to, if we provided Chromebooks at the meetings, if we could do away with all of the paper pamphlets or packets. They would be waiting at your station or at the desk here, fired up to the drive, which we've been using, and you could just follow along that way. Would the board be open to that if we provided those?
That sounds like a great idea.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Next item I have regards the Winston Thomas process. We've got a couple of things. The first is that I believe, and we're hopeful that at the next board meeting, we'll have a contract for engineering services related to the the demolition and restoration at the Winston Thomas property, basically to put the property back into a rebuildable state. That engineering contract would be coming to you in a couple of weeks, and then once that engineering work was done, we can go ahead with trying to get that demolition work done and getting the site cleaned up. So that will be coming up soon. The other item is, as you know, we've been working on putting together materials to take to IURC to see if it's possible for us to do the bonding for a project there. We will be bringing that request to you on the 27th of March, and with an eye towards having it before the council on April 12th. And then after that, it would go to the IURC. So any questions anyone has about the Winston Thomas property or the state of this facility or any of the space needs and so forth, please, we've got several weeks here that we can talk about all of that as we go forward. So I just want you to know what the calendar is for that.
So you said something in 2 weeks on like the 13th as well?
Did I say the 13th?
Well, the one thing you said the 27th, but one thing you said in a couple weeks.
Oh, the engineering contract. Yes, that would be on the 13th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know I will not be here that day.
Okay, but regardless of the bigger
Other-
project, we want to get the
yeah.
site cleaned up.
I just didn't know if it's spring break, if there would be other people that wouldn't be here at the meeting or just me. Okay. Okay. Just me then.
If it doesn't work, we could
Okay.
bring it the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vic, just a quick question. So this the engineering for this cleanup of the site, is that, I just want to make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse. Is this something that needs to get done anyway, even if we do not go forward with a new
Yes.
service center?
Yes, we want to get the site cleaned up, and you've all seen it. There's some crumbling buildings, there's the trickling filter that has various stuff in it, and so forth. We just would like to restore the site, regardless of what comes next, whether it comes in the current span of years or in the distant future. We want the site to look more like the natural site than it does today. So, but there wouldn't be any stream restoration activities or any of those kinds of things there either.
Great. That's, I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the third thing is, just thinking about Jim Sherman, I hope you're still on, Jim. We really did try to make an effort to get the boardroom tech up to the point where we can do hybrid meetings. We expect the continuing delay on the television set is still holding us up, but once that's here, we should be able to get this room set up for hybrid meetings. So I just wanted you to know we're still working on it. It just isn't done yet. And I hope you're doing well, Jim. The next one is to just be aware. Frank has worked with Holly and the Parks Department to make interpretive signs regarding the recently finished Hidden River Tunnel. The first one, I think, is going up soon? Yeah, I call it 3rd Street Park. I can never remember the names, but it's going in near the playground there at the park near the Boys and Girls Club. The other ones will be upstream, I think, near Dunn Meadow, and downstream near the outfall, or where it comes out of the tunnel. So there will be 3 interpretive signs going up to tell the story of the culvert and why it's there and what it does for us. And then the last item I have regards the Resource Recovery Project, the Waste to Energy Initiative. We had a meeting about a week ago last Friday to hear the preliminary report from the engineers. There's a lot of optimistic stuff in there about what we might be able to do in terms of reducing our carbon footprint and our electrical purchases in the future, and also and a lot of analysis of the finances of such a project. We will be meeting with we expect to get the final report sometime in early mid-March, and then we would be scheduling a public event to present the results of all of that with the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District staff and the contractors to tell the whole story of what we've learned. It's all been a very interesting conversation, and I think there's a lot to digest. I'm sorry, that's a terrible joke. I didn't mean to make it. No pun intended. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Vic. Okay. Are there any petitions or communications from the public? Or anyone else? All right. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn? The meeting is adjourned.